Assalamualaikum and a very good day again. We are here today to continue our lecture on perfect competition. In the previous lecture, we have already started with the perfect competitive market, where we have learned how firms in this type of market makes decision in terms of price and output. Okay, so we have already identified that in the short run there are three possible types of profit that a firm in a perfectly competitive market can experience. Okay, so this profit includes supernormal profit or positive profit, there's normal profit or zero profit, and the last one is a loss or basically negative profit. Okay, now in the event that a firm is earning a loss in the short run, what should the firm do? Should the firm continue the production or should the firm shut down its production? Okay, so the next topic that we're going to look at will actually looks at to what extent should the firm continue or shut down its production, okay, if it is earning a loss. All right, so let us look at the shutdown point. Okay, now the thing is, if a firm is earning a loss, okay, so it will only shut down its production if it cannot cover its average variable cost. Okay, so a firm, okay, should continue to produce as long as its price is greater than its average variable cost. Okay, but once the price falls, okay, below the average, the minimum average variable cost, so it makes sense for the firm to shut down the production temporarily, okay, to save on the variable cost. Okay, so what is actually a shutdown point? Well, the shutdown point is the point at which the firm, okay, will gain more if it decided to shut down its production rather than staying in the business. Okay, so a shutdown point try to identify, okay, the last point whereby the firm, okay, should make decision whether to stay or shut down. Okay, so the thing is, as long as the total revenue, okay, is more than the total variable cost, temporarily producing at a loss is the firm's best strategy. Okay, since it is taking less of a loss than it would be by shutting down. So what I'm trying to point out here is that when a firm is incurring a loss, okay, you cannot straight away make decision to shut down the production. You have to see whether or not, okay, your total revenue can cover your total variable cost. So as long as your total revenue can cover your total variable cost, it makes sense for you to operate the firm at a loss rather than shutting down production. Okay, but if your total revenue cannot cover the total variable cost, then it will be a wise decision for the firm to shut down its production temporarily. Okay, now let me show you a diagram, okay, that try to illustrate why it is wise for a firm to continue, okay, or shut down its production, okay, when it is incurring a loss. Now, this is the case for perfect competitive firm. Okay, so as you can see, we have a series of cost curve, okay, ranging from average total cost curve, right? And then we have average variable cost and also our marginal cost. Now we also have our demand curve, or also known as the price curve or the margin revenue curve. Notice that the price curve is a straight horizontal line because we are dealing with a perfectly competitive firm. Okay, now, so what we're going to do now is we want to identify, okay, whether or not the firm, okay, should continue the production or should it shut down. Okay, so first of all, let us identify how many output should the firm produce. Now remember, any firm, okay, they will always produce at the point whereby MR equals to MC. This is the profit maximizing condition. So you have, okay, your MR curve, and this is your MC curve. You can see that the profit maximizing point is here at point E. Okay, so at point E, what's the output level? You refer to the quantity axis, so that will be 8. Okay, and what is the price? Well, you have to go up until you reach your price curve. So basically your price is roughly here, so it's about 35 here, okay, or label it as F. Okay, so that's the profit maximizing price and output level. Now, if we want to know what is the sales or the total revenue earned, okay, if the firm is producing 8 units of output at a price of F ringgit, then you have to multiply, okay, the price by quantity. So basically the area of 0, F, E and G is your total revenue area. So now what we're going to do next is we would like to identify what is the cost incurred for the firm. Well, the firm is producing, okay, 8 units of output. So the cost of producing a unit of output requires you to go up until you reach your average total cost curve and you stop. So you're going to read here, okay. So this is roughly about 41 ringgit, okay, or also labeled by point B. Okay, so you can see that this is the cost per unit, okay, which is from 0 to B. But you are producing 8 units of output. So what would be your total cost? So you are required to multiply the cost per unit, which is OB, or roughly about 41 ringgit, multiply it with 8 units of output. So this area of O, B, A and G is your total cost area. So notice that the total cost area is greater or is larger than the total revenue area, which is this area. Okay, so you can see that you are going to incur a loss because there are some part of the cost which your revenue cannot cover. So this is your loss. Alright, so this is clearly a loss situation. So when the firm is incurring a loss, what should the firm do? Should it continue production or should it close shop? So as we have looked at just now, as long as price, okay, is greater, okay, than the average variable cost, then the firm should continue. Okay, but if price is below your average variable cost, then you should shut down. So notice that your price is here at F. Okay, so if you are producing 8 units of output, what would be your average variable cost? So what you need to do is you need to go up until you reach point C and you stop. So you can see that it is 20 ringgit. So the value of your average variable cost is 20 ringgit. So meaning that, okay, this value of average variable cost is below your current price. So the rule is that as long as price, okay, is above your average variable cost, you should continue even though you are incurring a loss. Okay, now why is that the case? Now remember that when you shut down production, okay, it doesn't mean that your loss is zero. Okay, you still gonna incur some costs. Okay, so even though, okay, you are not producing anything, but you still incur some costs, and this cost is gonna be fixed cost. Alright, so when you are incurring a loss and you want to decide whether or not you want to continue or shut down, so you have to compare the loss value, okay, with the amount of fixed cost. Alright, so if the loss value is less than your fixed cost, then you should continue. Okay, or if it is the other way around, if your loss, okay, is if it is greater than the fixed cost, then it would be better for the firm to shut down production. So what I'm trying to show you here is that, okay, when a firm is incurring a loss in the short run, okay, they shouldn't straight away decide to close shop. okay, or to shut down production, they have to see whether the current price is it greater or less than the average variable cost. So in this case, okay, since your price, okay, is greater than the average variable cost, it is wise for the firm to continue production even though it is incurring a loss. Okay. Alright. So now that we have looked at the shutdown, okay, point, okay, and what would happen if a firm is incurring a loss in the short run. So we're gonna shift our focus, okay, towards the long run competitive equilibrium. So we would like to see what would be the price and output decision in the long run for a perfectly competitive firm. Okay. Now, in the long run, okay, profit and losses are inconsistent. Okay. So the thing is that profit tend to create incentive for new firms to enter the market. Okay. So this will cause output to increase, but price will fall and eventually result in zero profit. Okay. So once zero profit is achieved, there will be no entry of new firms into the market. Okay, but when we have losses, okay, in the industry, existing firms tend to leave the industry. Okay, so what happened in the long run would be firm tend to get zero profit. Okay, so zero profit condition, okay, is the requirement in the long run. Okay, so in the long run, okay, the only equilibrium position will enable the firm to earn zero profit. Okay, so this is the case for a perfectly competitive firm. So in the long run, a perfectly competitive firm tend to get zero profit. Okay, now when firm getting zero profit, it doesn't mean that the entrepreneur doesn't get anything for all his efforts. Okay, so in order to stay in the business, we understand that entrepreneur, okay, they have to receive their opportunity costs or their normal profits, okay, that the owners of business would have received in the next best alternative. Okay, so normal profit, okay, are included as a cost. Okay, and they are not included in economic profits. So economic profits are profits, okay, above normal profit. So even though, okay, some firm, okay, has super efficient workers or machines, okay, that produce rent, okay, it will not take long, okay, for competitors to match these efficiencies, okay, and cause price to fall. Okay, so so even though the firm is going to earn zero profit, but zero profit is actually the minimum amount of profit for the firm to survive, okay, in the market. Right? So zero profit condition is enormously powerful. Okay, so it makes the analysis of competitive markets far more applicable to the real world, okay, than can a strict application of the assumption of perfect competition. Okay, so let us look at the condition, okay, of zero profit in the long run. Okay, so that is your marginal cost function. Okay, and the horizontal line represent the demand curve, okay, in the long run. So we know that profit maximization is achieved at the point whereby MR equals to MC. Okay, so we also include our short run average total cost curve and also the long run average total cost curve. All right, so what happened is that in the long run, okay, so maximum profit is achieved at the point whereby MR equals to MC. All right, so this is the profit maximizing condition. So if you want to know how much, okay, output is produced, you refer to the output axis. And if you want to know what's the price level, you refer to the price axis. Now notice that in the long run, okay, at the profit maximizing point, okay, average total cost in the long run is also minimized. Okay, so this shows that in the long run, okay, a firm in a perfectly competitive market tend to experience normal profit or zero profit. Okay, and why is that the case? Well, the main reason is because, okay, in this type of market, there is easy entry and exit. So a profit in the industry attracts new firms to come into the market, while losses will cause existing firms to leave the market. Okay, so eventually in the long run, what happens is that profit level will become zero, and there is no incentive for new firm to come in for fear of profit level will fall, okay, and become negative. Existing firm also doesn't want to leave the current industry because there is no guarantee that in the new industry they will get zero or positive profit. So the best bet would be to stay in the current industry and earning normal profit or zero profit. Okay, as you all know, in economics, when we calculate, okay, our profit, we already consider all the costs, okay, both explicit and also implicit costs. So we also take into consideration the opportunity cost or the contribution, okay, of the entrepreneur in the production process. So even though the firm is earning zero profit, but it has taken into consideration all the costs, including the payment for the entrepreneurs. All right. So that is the long run competitive equilibrium for the perfectly competitive market. So previously, okay, we have started off by looking at the perfectly competitive market. So in the perfectly competitive market, what we would like to do is we would like to understand how a firm makes decision in terms of price and output in the short run and also in the long run. So in the short run, you can see that a firm has three types of profit that they can experience. If they are lucky, they can get positive profit or normal profit, okay, but if they are unlucky, they'll get a loss. Okay, now once a firm is earning a loss, you cannot straight away, okay, decide to shut down production. They have to see whether or not the current price is it greater or less than the average variable cost. So as long as price is greater than average variable cost, then the firm should continue production even though it is earning a loss. But once price is below average variable cost, it would be wise for the firm to shut down production. So price equals to average variable cost is what we call as the shutdown price. Okay, so this is the starting point whereby the firm needs to decide whether or not to continue or shut down. Once price falls below average variable cost, then they have no choice but to shut down production temporarily. Okay, now we have also looked at the condition of long run. Okay, so in the long run, we have seen that firm, okay, will be earning normal profit because, okay, of entry, easy entry and exit. Okay, so even though the firm is earning zero profit, but this profit is adequate for the firm to cover all the costs that they incur in the production. All right, so we have already covered, okay, everything about perfect competition. So what we're going to do next is we're going to try, okay, some exercise on shutdown and also on long run equilibrium position for a firm. Okay, well, let's look at this question. Okay, so this is on shutdown, okay, condition. So let us, okay, do this question together. Okay, now we have a manufacturer of computer chips. Okay, now it produces output according to the given total cost function. Okay, so as you can see here, total cost is equals to 1000 plus 200q minus 0.5q squared plus 0.025q to the power of 3. Okay, now as you can see here, this cost function represents a short run cost function. Okay. Now, any particular reason why this is a short run production function? Well, if you can recall, okay, in our cost chapter, we know that in the short run, we have both fixed costs and also variable costs. Okay, so fixed cost is cost that doesn't depend on the level of output. So in other words, it is constant in value, while variable cost is the cost that depends on the level of output. So basically, it depends on Q. Okay, so if you look at this total cost function, so the constant component is your fixed cost, while the rest with the term Q, all of these are our variable cost because it depends on the level of output. So if you look at the first question, it requires you to identify the fixed cost and also variable cost. So since fixed costs are the costs, okay, for using fixed input, and it doesn't depend on the level of output, well, that would be equal to the constant value of 1000. Okay, and as for the total variable cost, so that would comprise of all the term in the cost function with the Q, okay, term. Alright, so that's your total variable cost. Okay, now the second question requires you to state the shutdown condition. Okay, now the shutdown condition is that price, okay, if it is equal, okay, to average variable cost, so this is what we call as the shutdown price. Okay, so if your price greater than average variable cost, then it would be better for you to continue production. But if price is less than average variable cost, then it would be wiser for the firm to shut down production. Okay, so price equals to average variable cost is known as shutdown price. Okay, so as long as price is greater than average variable cost, you should continue production. But once price is below average variable cost, then you should shut down production. Okay, now the third question wants you to calculate the shutdown price. Okay, well, remember that shutdown price, okay, is the price, okay, where it is equals, okay, to the average variable cost. Okay, so that is what we call as the shutdown price. So if you want to calculate the shutdown price, so you have to make sure that, okay, so the shutdown price would be price equals to the minimum average variable cost. Okay, so to find shutdown price, you need to minimize average variable cost, which requires you to differentiate average variable cost with respect to Q and set it equals to 0. Okay, so if, alright, so if you want to differentiate your average variable cost, what you need to do is you need to derive to the average variable cost curve. So average variable cost would be total variable cost divided by Q, and that will give you, okay, so what will you get? Correct, 200 minus 0.5 Q plus 0.025 Q squared. Okay, so this is your average variable cost function. Okay, right. Okay, so you still recall how to find average variable cost. So remember, average variable cost is total variable cost divided by Q. Okay, so if you want to find average variable cost, so you need to take the total variable cost function and then divided it by Q. So all this total variable cost component, when you divided it by Q, you will get 200 minus 0.5 Q plus 0.025 Q squared. Now remember, we want to minimize it because that's the condition for the shutdown price. So if you want to minimize it, you have to differentiate your average variable cost function, and that will give negative 0.5 plus 0.05 Q, and you set it equals to 0. So when you solve this, so 0.05 Q equals to 0.5, and Q will be equals to 10. Alright, so to find the value of average variable cost, you need to substitute Q equals to 10 into the AVC function. Alright, so your AVC function just now was this, so let's copy this down. Okay, so AVC, so that's your AVC function, and you have to substitute, okay, Q equals to 10 into the function. So let's do that. Okay, so all Q, you have to replace it by 10. Okay, so plug this into the calculator and you're going to end up getting 197.50. So your shutdown price is 197.50. So this basically shows that if, okay, if you want to produce, okay, you have to make sure that your price should always be greater than the minimum of average variable cost. Okay, so once your price is below that, then you have to shut down. So your shutdown price can be found by identifying the minimum point of your average variable cost. So in this case, it is 197.50. Okay, right. Okay, now the next question that we're going to try would be on perfect competition. Okay, so we have already looked at the long run equilibrium. All right, so let's try a question which basically will test your understanding on long run equilibrium for perfect competition. Okay, now remember that for a perfectly competitive firm, in the long run, okay, they will get zero profit. Okay, and if you can recall, okay, what we have looked at just now, okay, in the long run, okay, firm, okay, will be earning normal profit or zero profit, and they will produce at the point whereby their average total cost is minimized. Okay, so that's the main reason why they are earning zero profit. Okay, so now let's go back to the question. Now suppose we have a firm, okay, it is operating in a perfectly competitive industry. Now it has the following long run total cost function. Okay, now as you can see, the total cost is 54Q minus 2.4Q squared plus 0.03Q to the power of 3. Now, if you look at the total cost function, there is no element of fixed cost. Why? Because there isn't any constant there. So your cost function only comprises of Q. So this shows that okay, this is a long run function because it only comprises of variable cost. So remember that in the long run, we only incur variable cost. Okay. Now the question wants you to find the long run price for the firm. Now we know that, okay, any firm, okay, they will always try to maximize their profit. Okay. So to maximize profit, they will produce at the point whereby MR equals to MC. However, in the long run, okay, a firm, okay, operating in a perfectly competitive market, okay, will also operate at the point whereby average total cost is minimized. Okay, a PC firm, okay, is also operating at minimum average total cost. Okay, so to find the equilibrium price in the long run, actually you have two ways to do it. Okay, either you use MR equals to MC, which is the normal condition, okay, that you are already used to, or because the fact that the firm is earning normal profit and they are also operating at the minimum of average total cost, you can also find the long run price by identifying the point whereby average total cost is minimized. Okay, so you have two options. Okay, but if you want to use the first option, okay, you need to have your MR and also your MC functions. For marginal cost, you wouldn't have any problem. Since you have your total cost, you can find marginal cost. Unfortunately, for marginal revenue, there is no information about price. Therefore, it's quite impossible for you to find profit maximizing price using the first condition. So this gives you, no other alternative but to use the second condition, that is trying to minimize average total cost. So to find, okay, the long run price, you have to minimize average total cost. And to minimize average total cost, you have to differentiate average total cost with respect to Q and set it equals to 0, because this is optimization, remember. So always remember, whenever you want to minimize or maximize something, you have to differentiate the function and set equals to 0. So in this case, since you want to minimize average total cost, so you have to differentiate average total cost function and set it equals to 0. Now, before you can minimize average total cost function, notice that you need to have an average total cost function. However, the question doesn't provide one. So how do you find average total cost function? Well, that's very simple. Okay, your average total cost can be found by dividing the total cost function by Q. Okay, so if your total cost function is already given, so let me copy this down. So that's your total cost function. So let's copy it here. And you have to divide it by Q, okay? And that will leave you with 54 minus 2.4 Q plus 0.03 Q squared. Okay, so do you get how to find or to derive to the average total cost function? Okay, all right. So now going back to the question, we want to find the long run equilibrium price, and therefore we're going to use the condition of minimizing average total cost. So if you want to minimize average total cost, you have decided that you have to differentiate average total cost function and set it equals to 0, isn't it? So based on your average total cost function, if you differentiate it, okay, so differentiating 54 will give you 0. Differentiating negative 2.4 Q will leave you with negative 2.4. And if you differentiate 0.03 Q squared, that will leave you with 0.06 Q. Alright, and then simply set it equals to 0. Okay, so if you solve this, so you're going to get 0.06 Q equals to 2.4. So Q will be equals to 2.4 divided by 0.06. So that will give you how much? So let's plug this into your calculator. So 2.4 divided by 0.06, and that will give you a value of 40 units. Okay, but remember, we want to find price, okay, in the long run. So you have to substitute, okay, your Q. Okay, so let me write this down. To find P, substitute the minimum, okay, the value of output which able to minimize cost into your average total cost function. So your average total cost function is this. So let's copy this down. Okay, and then you have to substitute the value of 40 into it. Okay, so just plug this into your calculator and you're going to get a value of 6 ringgit. So if you want to produce in the long run, so to get the maximum profit, the firm should set a price equals to 6 ringgit. And you can see that we are doing it differently from the regular MR equals to MC, or margin revenue equals to marginal cost. Now, why is that the case? Because the information given, okay, is kind of limited. There is no information on MR function. Okay, so because of that, you cannot use the profit maximizing condition to find the value of equilibrium price. So that left you with the only alternative, that would be to minimize average total cost. Because if you refer back, okay, to our slide just now, okay, you notice that in the long run, okay, the firm is also producing at the minimum of the average total cost. Okay, so they are also setting price equals to the minimum average total cost. So to find the equilibrium price, you can also set it equals to the minimum of average total cost. So whenever you want to minimize or maximize something, you have to differentiate it and set it equals to 0. So it's the same case here. Because you want to minimize average total cost, you have to differentiate average total cost and set it equals to 0. Alright, so doing that will give you a value of Q, but because you want to find price, you have to substitute into the average total cost, because at the minimum of average total cost, price is equals to average total cost. So that's why I substitute the value of Q into the average total cost function to find price. Okay, so that will be all for perfect competition. Okay, I hope that you have already understand, okay, the main focus, okay, of the chapter. So what we are going to do next is we're going to move on to the second type of market, that would be monopolistic competition. Now, the way we analyze the remaining market would be much similar to the way we analyze the perfect competition. So we're going to look at some of the characteristics, and then we're going to look at how the firm, okay, makes decision in the short run and then the long run. Okay, so let's focus on monopolistic competition. Okay, so this is a new, okay, chapter. Okay, so just bear in mind that we have already, okay, shifted, okay, our analysis on another chapter. Okay, all right. So Okay, so what happened is here, all right, so we're going to look at the main objective, okay, of the lecture on monopolistic competition. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to define, okay, and identify what exactly is monopolistic competition. And then we're going to explain how output and price are determined in this industry in the short run and also the long run. Okay, so that would be our focus for today. All right. So what exactly is monopolistic competition? Okay, so if you can recall, when we analyze perfect competition, it is a type of market whereby we have too many firms, okay, too many buyers, and the firm is producing homogeneous or standardized product. Okay, so there is free entry and exit into the market. Now, as for monopolistic competition, these are market with the following characteristics. Okay, there must be a large number of firms. Okay, each of these firms is producing a differentiated product. Now, firms will compete on product quality, price, and marketing. And in this type of market, firms are also free to enter and exit the industry. Okay, so let us go through, okay, the characteristics in more detail. Okay, now when we talk about large number of firms, this simply implies that each firm, okay, they have only a small market share, and therefore they have a very limited market power to influence the price of its product. Okay, now it is also the case that each firm is going to be very sensitive to the average market price, okay, but no firm will pay attention to the actions of the other firms. Okay, and there will be no one firm's actions directly affect the actions of the other firm. So when there are large number of firms, you can see that each firm has a very limited power or a very small market share. So they don't have much influence, okay, on the other firms. Okay, so this will cause collusion or conspiring to fix prices very impossible in the market. Okay. Now, the second characteristics is product differentiation. Okay. Now, what is product differentiation? Now, when we talk about product differentiation, okay, this is where each firm, okay, they make a product slightly different from the products of competing firms. Okay, you can see that in general they are more or less the same or similar, but there are slight differences between each product. Now, a very good example would be the detergent, okay, produced by the different detergent companies. Okay, so if you look at the market, you can see that we have Breeze, Dynamo, Fab, Tiger. Okay, we have Type, we have Top. Okay, and in general, they are detergent. Okay, you can use it to, you know, wash your clothes, isn't it? But then there are slight differences between these brands. Okay, what would be the differences? Well, it can be in the form of the fragrance, the texture, the shape, the packaging. Okay, so that what makes the product different. So this is what we call as product differentiation. Okay, so the product, okay, is slightly different from the competitors. Okay, now in a monopolistic competitive industry, you can see that firm, okay, will compete in these three areas, namely quality, price, and marketing. Now, when we talk about quality, this includes design, okay, reliability, and service. Okay, so because firms, okay, they produce differentiated products, so each firm you're going to see that will face downward sloping demand curve for its product. Okay, but as you all know, when it comes to the downward sloping demand curve, there is always a trade-off between price and quality. Okay, so differentiated products, okay, must be marketed using advertising and packaging. So in this monopolistic competitive market, you're going to see that product differentiation plays a very important role. So the product are different in terms of quality, price and marketing. Okay, so because the product somehow or rather are a little bit different, therefore firm, okay, will face a downward sloping demand curve. That would be the normal demand curve that you learn in the demand chapter. Okay, but if you can recall, when we learn about perfect competition, the demand curve for the firm is straight horizontal line, isn't it? But for monopolistic competition, because the product that they produce is a little bit different, so they have some power to control the price. So the demand curve that they face tend to be downward sloping. Okay, but you have to bear in mind that when it comes to price and quality, there is always a trade-off. So if you want to produce high quality product, that means you must be prepared to set a very high price. But if the quality is very low, then the price is going to be lower. All right. And because the product is a little bit different, then advertising and packaging plays a very important role, okay, to stress on the differences. Okay, the last factor or characteristics would be entry and exit. Okay, so as you can see in this type of market, there are no barriers to entry. Okay, so this simply means that any firms can enter the industry if they see that there are potential to make profit, and existing firm, if they see that they are earning a loss, they can leave the industry easily. Okay, so there are no barriers available. All right, and because of this entry and exit, okay, firms tend to earn normal profit in the long run. Okay, it is impossible for them to earn economic profit. Okay, so they will be earning zero profit in the long run. Okay, so these are some of the characteristics of a monopolistic competitive market. Okay, now what we're going to do next is we're going to shift our analysis and look at how firm in this type of market makes decision. Okay, so we would like to identify what will be the price and output that the firm in monopolistic competitive market will choose in the short run and the long run. Okay, so we will start off with the short run analysis. Okay, so when it comes to making short run output and price decision, okay, so they will always produce, okay, at the point whereby margin revenue equals to marginal cost. Okay, now why is that the case? Because firms, okay, their main objective, it doesn't matter where, in which industry they are operating it, but the main objective is always to maximize profit. So whenever they want to maximize profit, so they will produce, okay, at the point whereby MR equals to MC. So once the firm has decided on the quality of the product that they want, and also the marketing program which they feel suits the product, so they will try to set price and output where they are able to maximize profit, and that would be at the point whereby MR equals to MC. Okay, so firm will tend to set the highest price, okay, that they can charge, okay, for the profit maximizing quantity. Okay, so the price is basically determined from the demand curve for the firm's product. All right, so let us look at the demand curve, okay, for a monopolistic competitive market. Okay, now this is the demand curve for a monopolistic competitive firm. Notice that this is just like the regular demand curve. It is downward sloping, okay, and because your demand curve is downward sloping, your demand curve is no longer the same as margin revenue. Okay, in fact, your margin revenue is going to be below your demand curve. Okay, so the downward sloping demand curve, which also posed as the price curve, and because demand is downward sloping, then you're going to see that there's going to be margin revenue below it. Okay, now you're going to have your normal marginal costs and your average total costs. Okay, they are simply the U-shaped curve, right? So if you want to determine, okay, what should be the profit maximizing price and output, then you have to identify the point whereby MR equals to MC. Okay. Alright. So as I said, okay, a firm in this type of market, they still continue with their profit maximizing objective. And for that reason, it will produce, okay, the quantity where MR equals to MC. So this is your MR curve. This is your MC curve represented by the purple curve, okay, and the orange curve is your margin revenue curve. So the intersection point is the profit maximizing point, or the point whereby MR equals to MC. So if you want to know what is the quantity, well, you have to refer to the quantity axis, and in this case it is 125. So 125 is your profit maximizing quantity. If you want to know profit maximizing price, then what you need to do is you need to go up until you reach your demand curve, or also known as the price curve, and then you refer to the price axis, and this is 75. As you can see, this is the price, the equilibrium price. Okay, so if the firm wants to maximize profit, they will produce 125 and sell at the highest possible price, in this case 75. Okay, and this price should be above average total cost function for the firm to continue operating. Alright, now if you want to know whether the firm is making a profit or not, well, you need to identify what's the total revenue and total cost. As you can recall, total revenue is price times quantity. So because you are producing 125 units and selling at a price of 75, so your total revenue would be the area of basically the square area here. So you have to multiply 75 by 125, or simply this area, okay, this rectangular area. Now at this output level, if you want to know what's the cost, so you need to know what's the cost per unit first. So you go up until you reach your average total cost, then you can see that it is 25. So 25 is the cost for one unit. So since you are producing 125, so you have to multiply 125 by 25 to get the total cost value. So this is the total cost. Okay, so you can see that the total cost is not that much. So total revenue is this larger, okay, rectangular area, while the total cost area is this white rectangular area. So this leaves the firm with a very huge profit represented by the blue shaded rectangle. Okay, so this diagram actually show you the condition of economic profit. So in the short run, a firm operating in a monopolistic competitive market can experience economic profit. Okay. There is also possibility for firm in this type of market to earn a loss, okay, in the short run. So this diagram simply show the loss condition. So again, okay, whenever you want to decide what is the profit maximizing position, you need to find where exactly is the marginal revenue curve and the marginal cost curve. So the intersection of the two, that's the profit maximizing point. If you want to know what's the profit maximizing output, you refer to the output axis, which is 40. If you want to know what's the profit maximizing price, you have to go up until you reach your demand curve, or also known as the price curve, and then you refer to the price axis. So in this case, it's 40. So if this firm wants to maximize profit, they should set price equals to 40 and quantity is also 40. So this square area, okay, is your total revenue. Now, you want to know at the end of the day how much profit will the firm earn. So this requires you to also calculate total cost. Now, because the firm is producing 40 units, so the cost per unit requires you to move up further until you reach your average total cost. So as you can see here, the cost per unit is 50 ringgit. So to produce 1 unit of output is 50 ringgit, and you tend to produce 40 units. So 50 multiplied by 40, or basically 2000. Okay, so this larger square area, that's your total cost. So because total cost is greater than total revenue, you can see that there is some area which the revenue cannot cover. Okay, so there is some cost area which the revenue cannot cover, and this is known as economic loss. Okay, so looking at this condition, the firm is earning a loss. Okay, so when the firm, okay, is producing in the short run, in actual fact, there are different types of profit that the firm might get. If they are lucky, they can get positive profit or even normal profit. Okay, but if they are not lucky, they will get economic loss or negative profit. Okay, so that would be the short run condition. Okay, now what will happen to the long run? Okay, so in the long run, okay, the firm tend to earn zero profit. Okay, zero profit, okay, happens because of the characteristics of free entry and exit. So when there is free entry and exit, so this causes all the firm to experience normal profit. Okay, now in the long run, what will happen is that if there is economic profit, this will encourage new firms to enter the industry. Okay, and when entry continues, okay, you're gonna see that, okay, profit level will slowly decline or drops. Okay, and then if the profit level becomes negative, existing firm will leave the industry until the profit level becomes zero. Once profit level becomes zero, existing firm, they do not want to leave the industry because they don't know what's going to happen if they enter a new industry. They might get unlucky and only receive negative profit, okay, or a loss. New firms wouldn't want to come in because they know that the current profit is zero. If they join the industry, profit will become negative. So they don't want to join the industry. So what happens is that in the long run, profit tend to become zero. Okay, so in the long run, you're going to see that a firm still wants to maximize its profit. Therefore, they will produce at the point whereby MR equals to MC. Okay, so this is the same case here. Okay, so what will happen when, you know, as firm enter the market? Okay, so we started off with positive profit, isn't it? So new firms would like to come into the market, but when new firms enter the market, you're going to see that slowly the market share drops. Okay, so this will cause the profit level to also fall. Okay, so as I said, eventually the firm, okay, will get zero profit. Okay, so as the firm enter the industry, you're going to see that each existing firm tend to lose some of its market share. Okay, so the demand for the product will decrease and the demand will shift leftward. Okay, so the decrease in demand will decrease the quantity, where MR equals to MC, and it will also lowers the maximum price that the firm can charge. Okay, so eventually price and quantity will fall, okay, with firm entry until price equals to average total cost, and firm will earn zero economic profit. Okay, so this particular diagram actually reflects the long run equilibrium position. As you can see, we have the downward sloping demand curve for the firm, which is also served as the price curve. We have our margin revenue curve, and this is the marginal cost curve. All right, so MR equals to MC is the profit maximizing point. As you can see, in the long run, the firm will settle by producing 75 units and setting price equals to 50. Now notice that, okay, the total revenue is simply multiplying price by quantity. So you multiply 50, okay, by 75. So that will give you about 3750 for total revenue. Now, if you want to know what's the total cost, so you need to identify what's the cost per unit. So because the firm is producing 75, so the cost per unit requires you to move up until you reach your average total cost curve, and you're going to see that it is 50. So the cost of producing one unit is 50 ringgit. Okay, so you are producing 75 units, so your total cost would require you to multiply 50 by 75, which will give you 3750. So because total revenue and total cost is the same, therefore the firm will be earning zero economic profit in the long run. Okay, so as you can see here is that in the long run, a monopolistic competitive firm behave like the perfectly competitive firm in the sense that they are also earning zero profit. Okay, so if firms incur an economic loss, you're going to see that firms will exit to achieve the long run equilibrium. Okay, so when we have positive profit, new firms will come in, but if we have a loss, existing firm will leave. So eventually what happens is that zero, the only profit that will be having in the industry is zero profit. Okay, so with zero profit, new firms don't want to come in, existing firm don't want to leave the industry. So this is the only equilibrium position in the long run. Okay, now, okay, so because we have already looked at two types of market, okay, perfect competition and monopolistic competition, and when you analyze, okay, the characteristics, okay, you can see that there are some similarity in the sense that for perfect competitive firms, there are many firms in the industry, there's free entry and exit. The same goes for monopolistic competitive firms, okay, but their demand curve are different. For perfect competition, the demand curve is straight horizontal line, but for monopolistic competition, the demand curve is downward sloping. So now what we're going to do is we would like to compare, okay, the condition, okay, for these two types of market. Okay, so there are two key differences between monopolistic competition and perfect competition. Okay, so number one is in terms of excess capacity, and the second one is the ability to mark up. Okay, so you're going to see that a firm, okay, has excess capacity if it can produce less than the quantity at which average total cost is a minimum. Okay, and a firm's markup is actually the amount by which its price exceeds its marginal cost. Okay, so we're going to analyze excess capacity and market and markup for the two types of market. Okay, so just remember when we talk about excess capacity, so it's referring to whether or not the firm is producing less than the quantity where average total cost is minimized. Okay, and when we talk about markup, we want to see whether price does it exceed marginal cost. Okay, now let's look at excess capacity. Okay, now this is your monopolistic competitive condition in the long run. Okay, so as you can see, firms in monopolistic competition operate with excess capacity in the long run equilibrium. All right, so this is your profit. So your profit maximizing point can be found at the point whereby MR equals to MC. Okay, so this is your MR curve, your MC curve. This is your profit maximizing point. So your profit maximizing output is 75 and price is 25. Okay, now notice that, okay, this is the profit maximizing output. Okay, now but if the firm decides to produce at the point whereby they are able to minimize average total cost, then the output that they can produce is 100 units. Okay, so what happened is that, okay, the downward sloping demand curve has forced the monopolistic competition to produce 75 instead of their maximum capacity of 100. Okay, so in actual fact, there is a possibility of an excess capacity for monopolistic competition. In other words, okay, the monopolistic competitive firm is able to produce more, okay, because they have the capacity to do that. However, because of the downward sloping demand curve nature, okay, it causes the firm to produce less, which is 75. Okay, so for monopolistic competition, you're going to see that the firm has some excess capacity because the firm is producing below the minimum of average total cost. Right? Now, in terms of markup, okay, so you can see that firms in monopolistic competitive market is able to mark up their price. Okay, so you can see that, okay, if the firm behave like a perfectly competitive firm, they will set price equals to marginal cost, which is here. Okay, but what happened is that the firm is setting price equals to 25. Okay, but in actual fact, they can actually set price equals to marginal cost. Okay, so this basically shows that the firm operating under monopolistic competition is able to increase price above their cost. Okay, so this is what we call as the ability to mark up. Okay, so when you look at monopolistic competition, you can see that this market is able to generate some excess capacity. I mean, what I meant is they have some excess capacity in their production and they are also able to mark up their price above cost. Okay, but when we look at perfectly competitive firm, okay, you're going to see that it's impossible for the perfectly competitive firm to do that. Okay, so for perfectly competitive firm, you can see that the demand curve is straight horizontal line. Okay, and then this is the marginal cost curve, and this is the average total cost curve. Notice that MR equals to MC at this point, and at this particular point, you're going to see that the firm is also producing at the minimum average total cost. So this basically shows that there is no excess capacity for the firm. The firm is producing at the most efficient scale. In other words, the firm is producing at the minimum cost possible. Okay, so this shows that the firm under perfectly competitive market is very efficient because they are able to produce at the minimum cost. But if you look at monopolistic competition, okay, monopolistic competition is not producing at the minimum average cost. Okay, they are producing to the left of the minimum of average total cost. So this shows that the cost is slightly higher. Okay, so in this case, perfect competition or perfect competitive firm is more efficient. Okay. Now, because the firm is also setting price equals to marginal cost, then the firm also doesn't have the ability to mark up. Okay, so the firm is already setting price equals to marginal cost. So is monopolistic competition efficient? Okay, well, as you can see, monopolistic competition set price above marginal cost. Okay, so the marginal benefit, okay, exceeds marginal cost. So this simply shows that monopolistic competition is inefficient. Okay, but the markup of price above marginal cost arises from product differentiation. So why they are able to charge higher price than the cost? Because they are able to differentiate the product. Okay, so they are able to show to the consumers that their product is actually a little bit different from the other competitors. So because people value variety, okay, and because variety is costly, then the consumers should be prepared to pay higher price. So that's why monopolistic competition brings the profit, okay, and possibly efficient amount of variety to the market. Okay, so it brings the profitable and possibly efficient amount of variety to the market, even though they are not able to produce at the point whereby average total cost is minimized. Okay, so for monopolistic competition, what we have done is we have looked at what are the main characteristics. Okay, so you can see that monopolistic competition, okay, even though somehow or rather it is similar to perfect competition, but there are some differences. Okay, so the differences is in terms of product differentiation. So that makes the demand curve that they face tend to be downward sloping. Okay, so we have also extend our analysis towards price and output determination in the short run and also the long run. So in the short run, we have identified that there are, several possible profit that they're going to get, positive profit, negative profit. They can also earn normal profit, but in the long run, because of free entry and exit, firm can only experience normal profit. Okay, and then we try to make comparison between monopolistic competition and perfect competition. And as you can see, monopolistic competition, they have excess capacity in the production because they are not producing at the minimum average total cost. And monopolistic competition also have the ability to mark up because they introduce product differentiation. Okay, so with product differentiation means that consumers are open to variety, and variety would require more cost. Okay, so that's why the firm, okay, in the monopolistic competitive market are forced to charge higher price to take care of the differences in the product. Okay, so we have already looked at two types of market. So just to make sure that you understand, okay, with some of the concepts that we learn for monopolistic competition. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the examples, okay, to test your understanding on the concept of monopolistic competition. So let's move on to the next question. Okay, so we're going to look at the case for short run equilibrium, okay, for monopolistic competitive firm. Alright, so we have a manager at JDC Electrical Appliances. Well, he estimates that the total revenue of the company to be TR equals to 1200Q minus 2Q squared. Okay, now the total cost function is estimated to be 10,000 plus 120Q plus 2Q squared. For your information, the price is in Ringgit Malaysia and the quantity is in units of weekly sales. Alright. Now, the question requires you to find the profit maximizing price and quantity. Okay, so how do we find profit maximizing price and quantity? Now, remember that all firms, okay, all they want to do is to achieve maximum profit. And to achieve maximum profit, they have to produce at the point whereby MR equals to MC. Okay. Now, MR requires you to differentiate total revenue function with respect to Q, whereas marginal cost requires you to differentiate total cost function with respect to Q. Okay. So, you are already given the total revenue function, which is 1200Q minus 2Q squared. Okay, so let's differentiate it. So when you differentiate 1200Q, that will leave you with 1200. And if you differentiate 2Q squared, negative 2Q squared, that will leave you with negative 4Q. So that's your margin revenue. Okay. Now, let's proceed to marginal cost. Now, you have identified that to find marginal cost, you have to differentiate the total cost function. Okay. So, total cost is 10,000 plus 120Q plus 2Q squared. So, to find marginal cost, you have to differentiate this function. So, differentiating 10,000 will give you 0. If you differentiate 120Q, you will get 120. If you differentiate 2Q squared, that will leave you with 4Q. Okay. So let's rearrange this equation. So you bring Q to one side and numbers to the other side. So 1200 minus 120 equals to 4Q plus 4Q. Okay. 1200 minus 120. So that will leave you with 1080. And that is equals to 8Q. You can also write it as 8Q equals to 1080. So if you want to find Q, you have to divide 1080 by 8. Okay. And what will that be? So let's plug this value into your calculator, and that will leave you with 135 units. So if the firm wants to maximize profit, the total output that they should produce is 135 units. Okay. Now, if you want to find, but the question wants you to find price. Okay. So how do you find price? Well, if you look at this question, okay, there is no information of the price function. You are only given total revenue and total cost. But don't worry, you can still find your price function. Okay. So how do you find your price function? We're going to use total revenue function. Okay. Now notice that total revenue is price multiplied by quantity. Okay. While average revenue, okay, it's total revenue divided by Q. Okay. So, if you want to find average revenue, what you need to do is you need to take your total revenue function. Okay. So, let's go back to your total revenue function. Where is it? Okay. So, this is your total revenue function. So, let's copy this down. Okay. So, this is your total revenue function. And then you divided it by Q, okay, and that will leave you with 1200, okay, minus 2Q. Okay, so this is average revenue function. Now, what's the point of me showing you how to derive to average revenue function? Okay, now I show you just now that average revenue is total revenue divided by Q, correct? Okay, so let me write this down. Average revenue is total revenue divided by Q. Okay, and I have told you also that total revenue is price times quantity. Okay, and then you divide everything, by Q. Okay, now notice that Q and Q can be cancelled off, and that will leave you with P. So in other words, okay, your average revenue is actually your price function. So my point is, when I derive the average revenue function, okay, the main reason is because at the same time I'm deriving the price function. So because the question wants you to find output and price that maximize profit, so you need to come out with the price function. So substitute, okay, Q equals to 135 into P function, and your P is equals to 1200 minus 2 times Q, where Q is 135, and you will end up getting a value equals to 930. So if this monopolistic competitive firm wants to maximize profit, they will always produce at the point whereby MR equals to MC. And you were able to find the output that maximize profit. Okay, to find price, you have to substitute the value of Q equals to 135 into the price function. But because the price function is not given, you have to derive it. Okay, so your price function can be derived from your total revenue function actually. Now total revenue is P times Q, and because price is equals to average revenue, so to find price you have to divide the total revenue function by Q. So your price function is 1200 minus 2Q. So once you are able to derive the price function, all you need to do is substitute Q, and you will get your P to be equal to 930 ringgit. So the firm, if they want to maximize profit, they have to produce 135 units and sell it at a price of 930. Okay. Now, let's move on to the second question. Now, the second question wants you to calculate profit. Okay. Now, can you still recall how we calculate profit? Well, profit is the difference between total revenue and total cost. Correct? And total revenue is already given. Where's your total revenue function? So, let's go back to the question. Okay. Okay, hang on. So that's the total revenue function. Let's copy this down. Okay, just take this one. So this is the total revenue function. Okay, and then minus the total cost function. So again, we're going to just take from the question because it's already given. So your total cost function. Alright. And then let's simplify this equation. So you have 1200 Q minus 2Q squared minus 10,000 minus 120Q minus 2Q squared. Okay, so you take out everything in the bracket. Now be careful because when you want to remove the bracket, don't forget that you have to multiply this negative sign with each of the component of total cost function. Okay, so please be careful because students tend to forget to multiply the negative sign. They simply remove the bracket, so that is wrong. Okay, so let's bring this down a bit. So if you simplify this, so we're gonna group it together. So Q and Q, so 1200 just now. You minus with 120, that leave you with 1080Q. Okay, minus 2q squared minus 2q squared, you can add that up. That will give you minus 4q squared minus 10,000. Okay. And then what you need to do next is to simply substitute the amount of q into this. So your q just now was 135, isn't it? So minus 4 times 135 to the power of 2 minus 10,000. So let's turn this into a subscript. Okay. Okay, so do you understand what we have done just now? So we want to calculate profit. Okay, so to calculate profit, you need to have your total revenue and total cost function. So I plug in the two functions and I try to simplify it and then substitute the value of Q because we want to find the value of profit. So when you plug this into your calculator, you should end up getting, okay, a value equals to 62,900. Okay, so that's the value of profit. Okay, so that's how you find profit maximizing price and output for monopolistic competition. It's basically it's similar to what you did in perfect competition. You also use MR equals to MC. It's just that for perfect competition, the MR is a constant, but for monopolistic competition, your MR function is a function. Okay, all right. Now let's move on to the next question. Okay, now this is actually on long run equilibrium, so let's move this into a new page so that's much easier for you. Okay, so we want to find, okay, the equilibrium in the long run for a monopolistic competitive firm. All right. So we have a firm, okay, under the monopolistic competitive market. Now the demand curve is P equals 350 minus Q, and its long run total cost function is 355Q minus 2Q squared plus 0.05Q to the power of 3. Now, if you look at the question, it wants you to determine the long run equilibrium price and quantity. Okay, now how do you find long run equilibrium price and quantity? Now we know that any firms, okay, their main objective, okay, is to maximize profit. Okay, so the condition would be to use MR equals to MC, correct? Okay, or alternatively, okay, because we know that in the long run, okay, hang on, in the long run, a firm operating in a monopolistic competitive market will be earning normal profit. Okay, so if that is the case, they are also, okay, going to produce at the point whereby price equals to average total cost. Okay, so to answer this question, you have two ways of doing it. Okay, so it doesn't matter which method you use, but you're going to end up getting the same answer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the first method and then proceed to the second method just to show you that it is actually the same. Yeah, so we want to find MR. Now remember, MR is the derivative of the total revenue function. So because, okay, you are given the demand function, which is simply price equals to 350 minus Q, so we can use it to derive to the total revenue function, okay, which is P times Q, which requires you to multiply the price function by Q. So that will give you 350Q. Okay, this is okay. So to find total revenue, you have to multiply the P function by Q. So that will give you 350Q minus Q squared. Okay, so let's turn this into a superscript. Okay, now because you want marginal revenue, so that requires you to differentiate total revenue with respect to Q. So you're going to end up getting 350 minus 2Q. Okay, so are you okay with marginal revenue? Okay, now I'm also going to derive to the marginal cost function. Well, the total cost function is given, so let's take this down. Right, so to find marginal cost, you need to differentiate it. So you're going to get 355 minus 4Q plus 0.15Q squared. Okay, so that's your marginal cost function. So because you have your marginal revenue and marginal cost function, okay, so you can actually find the equilibrium price and output. So your MR is 350 minus 2Q, while your marginal cost, okay, is this function which we have just derived just now. Okay, so let's bring everything to one side. So you're going to have 0.15Q squared minus 4Q, okay, plus 355 minus 350 plus 2Q. So what I did was I bring everything to one side. Okay, so we already have 0.15Q squared here, and then 4Q minus 4Q plus 355. So the one on this side, when you bring it to the other side, don't forget to change the sign. So you're going to have negative 350 plus 2Q. So if you simplify, okay, you're going to get 0.15Q squared minus 2Q plus 5, okay, and this is equals to 0. So do you know how we solve for Q? So okay, don't worry, okay, all you need to do is just use your calculator. So that's the only thing that you need to do. Okay, so let's use your calculator. So don't forget to press the button mode 3 times, choose 1 for equation, press the right arrow key and choose 2 for degree, and your A value is 0.15, your B value is negative 2, and your C is 5. So that will give a value of Q equals to 10, or Q equals to 3.33. Okay, so to maximize profit, so Q must be higher lah, so that would be 10 units. Okay, so if Q equals to 10, so your price is gonna be 350 minus Q, where Q is equals to 10, so that will give you 340. Okay, so that's how you find profit maximizing price. So that's one method. Okay, or because you already know theoretically that a firm operating in the long run under monopolistic competition will be earning zero profit, so you know that they will operate at a point whereby price equals to average total cost. So you can also use this condition to find profit maximizing price and output. Okay, and you're going to see that it is the same. Okay, now let's see how we use the second condition. Well, we know that price equals to average total cost for monopolistic competition in the long run. Price function is given by 350 minus Q. Okay, and it should be equals to average total cost. Now, how do you find average total cost? Now, if this were your total cost function, okay, let's copy this down. Okay, hang on, yeah. So this, okay, is your total cost function. So your average total cost function should be total cost divided by Q, and that will leave you with 355 minus 2Q plus 0.05 Q squared. Okay, so that's your average total cost. So because we want to use this condition, price equals to average total cost. Okay, and average total cost is equals to this equation. Okay, and once you have this type of condition, what you need to do is you have to bring everything to one side. Okay, 350 minus Q. Okay, okay, so we're gonna have, so on the other side we already have 0.05 Q squared minus 2Q plus 355, and then you're gonna bring 350 to the other side. That becomes negative 350, and then negative Q, you bring it to the other side, we will get positive Q, and this is equals to 0. So if you simplify this, okay, you will get 0.05 Q squared minus Q plus 5, and this is equals to 0. So let's use the calculator again to solve this. Well, okay, you press the button mode 3 times, choose 1 for equation, press the right arrow key for degree and choose 2. So key in the value of A, which is 0.05, the value of B, which is negative 1, and the value of C, which is 5, and that will give you 10. Okay, so your Q will be equals to 10. Okay, so to find price, substitute Q equals to 10, okay, into P function. So your P equals to 350 minus 10, and that will give you with 340. So notice that this answer is exactly the same as what we did using the first condition, which is MR equals to MC. So for MR equals to MC, you did find Q equals to 10, right? And price equals to 340. Now, when you use the second condition, where in the long run, firm will operate at P equals to average total cost, you still get Q equals to 10, right? And price is equals to 340. Okay, so you have a choice. Okay, when we talk about equilibrium, it is always MR equals to MC. Okay, that's the profit maximizing condition. Now, just for the case of monopolistic competition, because we know that in the long run, the firm will be earning normal profit or zero profit. So you're going to see that they also will operate at the point whereby price equals to average total cost. So I show you both ways to find the answers. Yeah? Now, let's look at the second question. The second question wants you to calculate the economic profits. Well, if you want to calculate profit, you can use the normal profit formula, which is TR, total revenue, minus total cost. But since we just gone through, okay, some theories on monopolistic competition, we know that in the long run, okay, all firms in monopolistic market will be earning normal profit. Okay, hence, in the long run, this firm will get a profit equals to zero. Okay, so you don't need to calculate it. If you want to calculate it, you can do so, but okay, I will guarantee you that the profit is equals to zero, because theoretically we have learned that in the long run, a firm in monopolistic competition will be earning zero profit. Okay, so what we have done today is we have started off by by continuing with some parts of the perfect competition. So we have looked at shutdown condition and also long run equilibrium for perfect competition. And then we move on to the second market structure, which is monopolistic competition. And our analysis was focused on the characteristics and how firms make price and output decision in the short run and in the long run. Okay, so I hope that you can go through the exercises that we did just now, just to make sure that you get a hands on the theory that we have already gone through. In the next lecture, we're gonna continue, okay, with monopoly market. And that would be the third type of market structure. Okay, so that's it for today. So I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you. Dah. Okay, mana dia?